Welcome to a Brief History Conspiracy.
This week, the destruction of the Twin Towers.
But it is important to say that we've argued this before, that 3 buildings have been lost to fire. Steel-framed buildings with fireproofing have been lost to fire ever.
Yes.
And it was on September
11th, 2001, all 3.
Yeah, I would argue that 1 building has been lost to fire. 2 buildings have been lost to a big plane hitting them and then a fire. The building 7, which we're again not mentioning it, but we're with a commission report today. We're not mentioning building 7. Right. Okay.
So that adds some serious weight to the demolition side of things. When you use the same companies to clean up
Definitely.
that you used to set it up.
If you're new to our channel, please like and subscribe. It really does help us out. It needs to be done.
Yes.
The rumours were that either within 25 years they were going to have to spend billions refurbing these buildings or tear them down.
So in that case, if you were Larry Silverstein, why the hell would you sign a 99-year lease on buildings 6 weeks prior to the destruction of the towers that then requires billions of pounds worth of renovation within the short-term future? You're surely going to be significantly out of pocket once those renovations are required.
Yeah. His actual deal was for 1.3 billion over 99 years, right?
Okay.
With the Port Authority
Right.
that own the site. They only actually ever paid out 15 million.
Right.
So for a 15 million quid investment, he then sued.
Yep. The airlines.
And he said that basically he was covered for 3.5 billion, but he argued it was 2 terror events. So he tried to get 7 billion.
Wow.
He actually won in the end 4.6 billion. But then he sued, like you just said, he sued the airlines and said that your safety measures weren't up to scratch, so I want compensation, and won.
Wow.
He sued for compensation from a couple of other places as well, but and he basically amassed about 13 billion in the end.
Didn't realise it was quite that high a figure. I knew it was in the billions, but I didn't
nearly
realise.
13 billion.
And I knew that he'd managed to orchestrate it as 2 separate terror attacks to claim twice.
The little tinker.
Wow.
But he had to sue to get that. The insurance company wanted it's 1 terror attack, and he went no, and it's 2 buildings, and he's right. It's 2 buildings. So yeah, he was a little tinker on that one. Also, him and his son both had offices in the World Trade Center. Neither of them turned up for work that day.
Oh really?
No.
Oh, there's a surprise.
So
I would have put money on that if I, before the event.
Exactly.
So from being 15, from paying out 15 million and 6 weeks prior, and potentially being on the hook then for billions of pounds worth of repair. So actually, you were looking at a negative equity situation where you're just taking a lease out on buildings that you were then going to have to refurbish significantly, which would put you, I don't know, a few billion in the hole. He then comes out to the tune of 13 billion on top and becomes a billionaire overnight.
Yeah, he did well. And then obviously with very little experience in residential, in building work and this sort of thing, he then set out the project to build Freedom Tower, Trade Center 1, and the other buildings that are there. I think it's 5, is it? Other towers. And he fought and scrapped all the way. He got lots of grants to build the Freedom Tower. They did kindly give the land for the museum. They donated that.
I suppose when you made 13 billion overnight, it's probably not such a bad thing to give a little bit back to society, is it?
Yeah, but they had to scrap for money the whole way along this. He had 13 billion quid in the bank. He didn't seem to. He wanted to build Freedom Tower, but he didn't seem to want to use his own money to do it. So that's also maybe tells you a little bit about
I need to look up
the
his
man.
net worth prior to being the leaseholder on the World Trade Center complex.
Yeah, he was a millionaire.
He was a millionaire, but
he wasn't even the only
a
investor.
billionaire, was he?
He didn't pay the 15 million. It was him and a group of investors. So
he's almost just like a front then for the group of investors that were really behind the 13 billion
if
profit.
this was planned, it seems to have been planned on purpose. It seems to have been. He seems to have been positioned in the place where he took this lease on just to give them just enough time that if they did want to put any devices or weaken any areas or do something, that they just had just enough time to do it.
I suspect that
And his price, 13 billion.
I suspect you can't find a list of these names of other investors anywhere.
No, it just says list of investors.
A list of investors. Because I bet if you could find the list of names and it went Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, George Bush,
that would be a bit much.
Then it'd probably be a little bit too much and people wouldn't buy it anymore. So they've put a front man there called Larry Silverstein.
If he knew, he has a business plan of, look, I'm going to come to trade centres, he could get investors that have nothing to do with the rest of the plan. He's the only one that needs to know. So, right now, there are some, before we just talk about what we actually think, there are some stupid conspiracy theories out there that I've just got that I want to put to bed really quickly.
Okay.
There's the Zim Corporation, right? Now this is peddled as being fact, and in a lot of YouTube videos it's peddled as being fact, and that winds me up, because it took me about 5 minutes to show that it wasn't.
To debunk it, right, okay.
The theory being that the Zim Corporation, which is actually the Israeli shipping corporation, it was the nationalised shipping corporation.
Okay.
So they did shipping all over the world.
Yep.
It was denationalised and put on the stock market. Apparently the Rothschilds own about half of it, but you go and actually try to prove that.
Well, they had about half of everything supposedly, but
yeah,
go and try and prove it. So, you know, it's
yeah. So the
same
Rothschilds
story,
own half of it.
different asset.
The story being that they pulled out and broke their lease with the World Trade Center 2 or 3 weeks before the attack. So the story goes that they knew. The Israelis knew it was coming, so pulled their people out. And it's just not true. They didn't break their lease. The lease ended. They'd been planning for 2 years to move their headquarters, and that's all they did. And people moved in and out of the World Trade Center all the time.
I suppose it grabs a lot of people's attention because it's got some headlines there, hasn't it? It's the Jewish people, it's Israel, it's coincidental chronologically in terms of several weeks prior, even though you've just said it was planned for 2 years.
Yeah.
The fact that it was planned 2 years in advance probably means that it's not connected and it's just a coincidence. But
they moved out their headquarters. They still had offices in the building. They still lost people on that day. But also a big thing of their computer records were there. So they actually, as a company, were quite badly harmed by this event.
Okay.
If it really was planned, they'd have moved more than just people out. They'd have moved the actual valuable information out as well.
Depends what that office was up to in particular and whether they needed to hide anything, but yeah.
Yeah, you would put all the information that you didn't want anyone to find there.
Yeah, especially if you knew what was coming.
We'll remove the profitable stuff, put the unprofitable stuff. You know that crime we committed last year? Let's put the records for that in there.
Yeah, that'll do.
So, it's a way of looking at it, yeah. That it was convenient for them. You know, there's 4 employees that we don't like. Put them to World Trade Centre for a bit.
We'll just reassign them to the World Trade Centre
really
too.
Nice. You know that one that keeps saying he's going to whistle blow? Yeah, you got to transfer. Maybe. That's a way of looking at it.
Well, it's not like there's a history of meetings arranged in those buildings on September the 11th, 2001. But anyway,
there was quite a big meeting planned that day. But that's a whole other episode. So hold on for that episode when we get into the money aspect. Finally, there's a couple of myths going around as well. That it's just nonsense. One is that they weren't planes that flew in to the Twin Towers. It was CGI'd. I'm not even... The other one is that no one actually died on the day.
What?
Which is just... It makes no sense. Why would nobody have died?
But what about the victims of the families that... what's the word?
They were all staged.
Were all over the American government.
All crisis actors.
While it stalled the 9/11 Commission report for over a year. The only reason that the 9/11 Commission report got off the ground was because of the victims' families
going on the news
and saying we want an official report into this because of the lost loved ones. So no casualties.
That's nonsense. And that would assume that the government actually cared about people, and as well, which they, shocker, don't really. The innocent lives that were lost on that day, if this was planned by your government, don't care. There's a thing called groupthink, and this thing in psychology that you try to avoid in business. And that when businesses get together and they have groups making decisions, they dehumanise people quite dramatically. And this is why how big corporations can we'll downsize that company and we'll break it up and we'll just make 100,000 people unemployed and don't care because they just look at the numbers.
Yes.
Your government thinks in a similar way.
Yeah, of course they do.
Sorry if that's a shock to you, but they do. They don't care.
No, of course they don't. And a good shepherd never sharpens his knife in front of the herd.
Yeah, exactly. That's all we're putting. So after everything we've just talked about, and we didn't even mention the red flecks of that was found in the dust.
Oh,
or
okay,
the
yeah.
little iron filings that were found that
in the
again
dust.
make it look like thermite.
Indeed,
went off.
yes, very much so. They did some analysis of the dust from the New York City from September the 11th, and they do indeed find traces of the products of the thermite cutting through steel in the dust.
Yeah.
Which,
So if you can believe that experiment, that study, which I've got no reason necessarily not to. I've never actually seen anybody come out and say that it's not true.
no, I just don't think it's been officially done in any capacity by any organisation like NIST or anybody, because they, well, I suppose if they went looking down that road, it'd be very hard not to keep looking, wouldn't it?
Once you start mentioning things like thermate and magnesium stuff, it's hard not to. There are also some situations when steel can become oxidised and then its melting point drops dramatically.
Okay.
But I
that
haven't
requires a
mentioned
specific
it.
set of conditions.
Yeah, I haven't mentioned it because I've read it 3 times and I still don't understand. So,
Okay.
but apparently there are situations when steel can become thick, and there seems to be large amounts of this oxidised steel at Building 7 as well. But that nobody, and that's official, nobody can explain. So I even listened to a debate where there was a debunker and he was very, very good, and even he went at the end, nobody, I don't know. I can't explain that. There seems to be lots of this steel that melts at like 600 or 700 degrees centigrade because of this effect, and I don't know why.
Okay, I'm curious. I hadn't heard of that oxidisation theory before. And
It's not oxidising. It's some sort of chemical action with sulphur or something. I'm not saying that's so. I mean,
is this the one where they're trying to claiming that the sulphur impurities in the asbestos wall panelling was somehow lowering the melting point of the steel through an oxidation reaction?
That was another
of some
argument
description.
in the same debate they mentioned that, and he said nothing to do with it. There's no chance that had actually any effect.
The quantities of sulphur that would be contained within the minimal quantities of sulphur that would be contained, I don't think there'd be enough there to cause the kind of reaction that you would need to significantly lower the melting point of steel from like 1,500 down to like 600-700 degrees centigrade.
Apparently chemically it can happen, but again, if it did happen in large amounts in the Twin Towers, I would again go, there's some sort of design flaw there. That really should have come up in the NIST report, but it didn't.
Yes.
So what is your thinking? We've touched on everything there. It's incredibly difficult
just
subject,
from
so we might have
pure
missed
construction construction and destruction of the Twin Towers. I'd say I lean more towards the conspiracy theory in the fact that there was some kind of controlled demolition, just because of girders firing 600 feet across horizontally, across New York City, being impaled in other buildings. I'm not sure they can be thrown that far, although
somewhere weighing 10-20 tons.
It seems unlikely to me. The evidence of the actual analysis of the dust showing the use of thermate and the products from that reaction with the steel, including microspheres, isn't it, in the dust?
Iron,
the way the concrete dust cloud almost seems to have a pyroclastic type heat flow a little bit to it on the day as well, and almost looks like the pyroclastic flow of the gases after a volcanic eruption.
I think that was just pulverised concrete. Apparently people on the ground, it was warm, so it wouldn't be pyroclastic. But
so it's not pyroclastic then, perhaps. Okay,
it looks,
so maybe that's
but
not a great.
You didn't say
argument.
that. You said it looks like, and it's true. It does look like that.
Yeah, but I've got no idea from the video the heat of that. That massive
exactly.
of
but that's
dust
what
at
it
that
does
point.
look. It looks like a volcano going off.
It does look a little bit like that, yeah. I just think that there's some interesting theories on the official side as well. I do quite like the the blast furnace idea to get the temperatures up, which would then make the pancake collapse more plausible. So I think from the construction and the destruction of the buildings, it's very much up in the air. For me, it's quite close. I could buy some. I don't buy the official 9/11 Commission report and the missing bits from it and that, but some of the things NIST say, they don't seem too implausible. They do seem plausible in their theory.
That's their job, to try to make something plausible, isn't it?
I suppose it is. Yeah, that's exactly what they do. So, and they have done that to see make things at least seem plausible, if not in my mind, what actually happened.
Yeah. And we have to remember as well the group of the 1,400 or so architects that are grouped together and are manning another investigation.
Was it Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth?
Yeah, yes, because they don't believe it, and these are people that understand this stuff.
Yeah,
that when they look at the stuff about this soft steel, they understand it.
Yeah. Well, they designed these buildings day in, day out.
3 times I read the same thing and don't understand it.
And you know, they're responsible for the people's lives within the buildings that they design and manufacture. So if anybody's got a good grasp on this stuff,
they understand
they are the
this
guys.
stuff, and they say they yell bullshit.
Yeah,
they're saying there's elements of this that aren't possible and have never been explained properly.
Yes.
And that makes me right. So my thinking is actually I don't actually necessarily believe this was a demolition. I've never really believed it was a demolition.
Okay.
Because a lot of the argument says that it couldn't have collapsed. And now I say, no, I'm sorry, it could have done.
It did.
A plane went into this damn thing at 500 mile an hour nearly. There was, this isn't, I keep going to this point of it's not a normal building. So if it didn't act and behave in a normal way, isn't really surprising.
No.
This goes back to some of this Apollo 11 stuff when they say, oh, some of the videos don't look right. It's because they're not on the Earth, they're on the moon. It's going to look different. So it's an unusual situation. That's my point.
Okay, yeah, no, I think I agree with you a little bit there. I'd like to believe that it wasn't in any way a controlled or elements of controlled demolition on behalf of by the American government. I think people feel safer as well if that isn't the case, and it is just it was a pancake collapse of a poor building design that was said to withstand plane impacts, when in actual fact it was quite poor and it was going to always end up as a raging inferno that collapsed. Although it wasn't a raging inferno that collapsed, because there weren't raging fires, they were actually stifled fires.
Well, there was black smoke, which is an indicative of an oxygen-starved fire.
Yes,
maybe that is what we're talking about. This blast furnace idea there. That it
because it was oxygen-starved. Yeah, but you need oxygen for a blast furnace, don't you, to get the temperature?
Yeah, but if you get just like one jet, or coming from a very fixed point, that's how you create a blast furnace.
Yes.
You limit the oxygen, but you sort of
but then you've got
squirt it in like a turbocharger.
Yeah, you've got a turbo.
And you get much higher temperatures.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
So, but there are things that I don't. There's coincidences that make me nervous. For one, the sprinkler system didn't work because the water main was destroyed. Now, whether it was destroyed before or whether it was destroyed by the collapse, if it was destroyed by the collapse of the building, then why didn't the sprinkler system work? And it is very clear that the sprinkler system was
destroyed
damaged
prior to the destruction of WTC1 or WTC2.
You could argue that the plane went in somehow and that destroyed the water system, so maybe the sprinklers above didn't work, because literally the pipes were cut, sort of thing, maybe. But it seems more likely to me that the water main.
But they should have still worked below the impact zones in both the buildings.
Yeah.
Up to the impact zone.
But there's one thing that the sprinkler system failed. That's a big.
Yeah, a big coincidence.
Big flag to me that I go.
And it's not so much individual coincidences; it's the multitude of coincidences that we will later on explore through this series that then lead me to believe otherwise.
But my feeling is that the Twin Towers is different to what we're going to discuss in the next couple of episodes, in that it could have collapsed. It may not have been planned. I could see...
It's plausible that it collapsed.
I could see that this was a terror attack that the Americans knew was coming, and they took advantage of it.
Yeah, they let it happen in order to orchestrate
they could have even
globally.
Then gone in and weakened certain areas. Terrorists wouldn't have known anything about it. The terrorists just wanted to fly a plane at the building and make a big splash. They could have gone in and they could have, because they'd have experts looking at this and going, the building's going, but the buildings will stand. And then somebody has to go, actually, we don't want them to. It'll be a lot more dramatic if they fall down. And then all we have to do is weaken these points, and it'll go down like a pack of cards.
Yeah, that's definitely reasonable.
And that is a possibility for me.
Well, and then you think about all of the suspicious construction teams that were known to be visiting, not just in the weeks building up to 9/11, but going back years before 9/11. They've been having fireproofing upgrades corresponding to the impact zones on both towers. They'd only go
up to about 18, floor 18 with the improvements from the...
Oh, had they?
Was it 93, the first attack?
think it
when
was,
the
it was
bomb went
early
off in the
mid-90s, was it
attic.
95? I'm
I'll
not sure.
double check.
But I know what you mean, where the guy tried parking a van up against one of the structural
Yeah.
support columns in the basement with explosives in the van. Was that the one?
So after that,
Yeah.
they started improving the heat proofing, but they'd only got up to about floor 18 10 years later. So I'm sure it was 93.
Yeah, I think you're right with 93. I don't know why I had 95, but I think
I'm
you're right with
hoping
93.
I'm going to go, because on our last video, I said Operation Mongoose instead of Operation Mogul. I'm going with I got the M right, so I'm taking a moral victory.
Right, okay.
Still got it. So if it's 93, you're going to hear me going woohoo on the edit. Right, so yeah, that's my thinking, to be honest. I think it is, when you hear these people saying that it's impossible these buildings collapsed the way they did, I don't buy it.
Yeah,
it is possible.
I think it might be possible. I'm not saying that's what happened, but it's possible
Yeah.
or plausible.
But it's also possible that I don't think that there were demolition charges. I think there could have been, but I think it is possible that they went in and they weakened certain points to make sure that building collapsed. That is possible. I would, if there is evidence of thermite, that's what I think would have been done.
Okay.
And the Americans have got form on taking advantage of terror attacks. And actually, if you think about it, it's the perfect way to do it.
It is, because you're not then
yeah.
technically fully complicit, are you? Because you didn't actually orchestrate it. You were just complicit through negligence.
You ain't getting
Which
caught.
is the theme that you see through
Yeah.
all of the different institutions on 9/11. Complicit
Definitely.
through negligence,
Yeah.
basically.
We will do a video on FBI versus CIA.
Yeah, that was a really good one.
How that they knew all the bits to this.
Well, just not even just CIA, the NORAD, the
NSA knew bits.
the Bush administration, just basically anybody that did anything on that day.
If the FBI and CIA weren't in competition with each other, then
Can't put that on, can we? No. Sorry,
if
go.
the FBI and CIA weren't in competition with each other for the months leading up to this, they'd have rounded these 19 terrorists up, no bother.
Well,
But they were in
or if
competition. They
they'd
didn't
used,
speak to each other.
or if they'd used the Able Danger Terrorist Programme that identified Mohammed Atta as early as May of 2000,
Yeah.
they'd have also not granted them passports to come and learn to fly planes in America.
Technically allowed to use that though until after the events. And that's something we're going to do a video on, actually, the post events. And anyway, but we're getting off topic here.
We are.
So yeah, that's what I think. We'll see. In the next video, we're going to be doing Building 7,
Yes.
and then we're going to be doing the Pentagon. Now, one of these stories does have an argument to say, well, maybe it wasn't a terror attack. And one of them, there is absolutely no way in my mind is true. Guess which one is, in my mind, no way true? Pentagon or Building 7?
I think the Pentagon.
Yeah, there's no way that's true.
No.
So, yeah, so that's our next couple of videos, and then we'll go into the meat and potatoes of why we think this happened. So, thanks very much for watching.
Yep. Please like and subscribe.
We'll see you next time.
See you next week.
Yes, I always have to do this with my hands when we're talking.
Jazz hands.
Welcome.
Yeah, I don't know why you do that. Welcome.
The other thing I do when I do that is I go, it really just helps out.
Please, please.
It's
You
a
put your
little-
hands together and almost like you're
It's a
begging.
little nod of the head I do. Go on. Go on.
Go
Go
on.
on.
Please.